Sahano bhunaktu sahaviryam karavavahai tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahi.
Recording in progress.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamini Tapaharini Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadame Tayosva Pranamami Muhuram. So today's talk will be on Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. So we had a talk yesterday by Swami Sarvapriyananda, the Jnana Yoga and Practical Vedanta. Today, Swami Atmashraddhananda, who is the secretary of the Ramakrishna Ashrama Kanpur, will be speaking on Bhakti Yoga of Swami Vivekananda. And tomorrow, we'll have Raja Yoga by Swami Kaleshananda of our center. Then we'll have Karma Yoga by one of our scholars, who will compare Swamiji's idea on Karma Yoga, particularly works for work's sake, with the Western philosophical idea of duty for duty's sake of Kant and a critical analysis of Kant by Bradley. So very interesting paper she has been able to produce. And later on, we'll go for Swamiji's Bhakti Yoga again in the light of Christian mystics' love of God. St. Francis of Assisi, Joan of Arc, and Teresa of Avila, and so on. And 21st, which is the International Yoga Day, will sum up with Swami Vivekananda's synthesis of yogas and the Ramakrishna Mission emblem, what it testifies. Swami Atmashraddhananda was the editor of Vedanta Kesari, which was a journal started by Swami Vivekananda, first English journal of the order. We have two journals, one is Prabuddha Bharata and Himalayas, and Vedanta Kesari, which used to be Brahmavadin, started by the Madras disciples of Swami Vivekananda, Rajamaya and others. And he was the editor for about 12 years. Then he taught in the Probationers Training Center for Brahmacharis for about 8 years or so.
No, 2 years.
Only 2 years. Then he now is the secretary of Kanpur, and he is an inspiring speaker. He inspires the youth particularly, the IIT Kanpur, and he is kind enough to agree to speak on Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. Swami Vivekananda, as you know, has delivered lectures in the 4 yogas, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Karma Yoga. So much so, one of his Western disciples, American disciples, humorously said, "We are almost so sad there are only 4 yogas. If Swamiji had continued for some more yogas, it would be good." So we will listen to Swami Atmashraddhananda speak on Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga. Swami, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Maharaj, and pranams to you. And my greetings to all the people who are attending this online session. I'm glad that I'm part of this series on the yoga series, on the occasion of the International Yoga Day, which is now about to come. So I shall begin with a small prayer. That prayer is given right at the beginning of the Bhakti Yoga lectures of Swami Vivekananda. Om Satanmayo Yamarata Isha Samstho Gyaha Sarvago Bhuvanasya Gopta Ya Ishesya Jagato Nityameva Nanyo Hetur Vidyata Ishanaya Yo Brahmanam Vidadhati Purvam Yo Vai Vedascha Prahinoti Tasmai Tam Hadevam Atma Buddhi Prakashajam Mumukshurvai Sharanamaham Prapadye. The translation given of these 2 verses here is: He is the soul of the universe. He is immortal He is the rulership. His is the rulership. He is the all-knowing, the all-pervading protector of the universe, the eternal ruler. None else is there efficient to govern the word eternal. He who at the beginning of the creation projected Brahma, that is universal consciousness, and who delivered the Vedas unto him, seeking liberation, I go for refuge into that effulgent one whose light turns the understanding towards the Atman. These two are from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. We are here to discuss about yoga. I'm sure the audience, those who are in this talk present listening to it, have an idea of what yoga is. In these days, yoga is the word, you see, which all of us are acquainted with. And thanks to the recent efforts made in this direction, now more and more people know about yoga, and it's more practiced, whether it is the assembly in UNO passing the resolution about accepting yoga as the 21st, as the yoga, Universal Yoga Day or International Yoga Day, or at the private personal houses of countless people where they believe in yoga, or the doctors which they speak about yoga. There are so many ways of looking at this yoga idea. The yoga in India, of course, we know that it's an ancient word meaning joining with God or becoming one with God. And Swami Vivekananda, in his inimitable style, he has tried to connect these this idea of being one with God, the idea of yoga, through four faculties of the human mind: faculty of thinking, the faculty of will or working, the faculty of concentration, and the faculty of feeling. So it's the last one, the faculty of feeling, which we are actually discussing here, the faculty of having emotions. So it simply means bhakti. So if you have love, and that love is directed towards Ishwara, it's called bhakti. If the sometimes, of course, in a general way, we might say, oh, he has a great bhakti towards somebody, which means he loves him very much. But that's not the bhakti that we are speaking of. Bhakti means turning the mind towards Ishwara. That is the series of things which Swami Vivekananda also has spoken of at the beginning of the Bhakti Yoga. Swamiji gave lectures on yoga, 4 yogas, as just now Revered Swami Atmashraddhananda Maharaj explained. And he gave these lectures, and which are now available in the form of the small little book called Bhakti Yoga, which has got, they're not given in one setting. They are giving at different times. Some of them are given together, and some are given at different times. Anyway, they have all been compiled to make into this little book called Bhakti Yoga, running into around 15-20 small chapters. And the whole book, as it is just hardly 100 and odd pages, which is a pocket book, not a big, large book, which contains essentially what Swamiji has said about bhakti. Now, besides this, Swamiji has spoken about bhakti at different places. I shall read a small a passage from Inspired Talks. Swami Vivekananda in 1895, when he was in New York, he went to Thousand Island Park in the River Lawrence, close to New York, and spent 2.5 months there around that time. So there, whatever he spoke, not whatever, but quite a bit, was recorded by one of the participants or the person who was present, Miss Waldo, and later published as Inspired Talks. There, in this, we find Swamiji speaking about bhakti. I'll read one or two passages connected with what Swamiji has said of bhakti here. He says, the path of devotion is natural and pleasant. Philosophy is taking the mountain stream back to its source by force. It's a quicker method, but very hard. Philosopher says, check everything. Devotion says, give up all to the stream, have eternal self-surrender. It's a longer way, but easier and happier. So in a way, he summarizes the difference between the jnana and the bhakti approach. The jnana, or the philosophy, as Swamiji mentions the term, means that you go to the very source from where consciousness or this universe comes, and you analyze and you spend your time, you do sadhana to understand the very source of who am I. Whereas in the bhakti yoga, it is a different approach. Swamiji says the philosophical approach or the jnana approach is a quicker approach, but it's very hard. It's very challenging. It has a lot of qualifications required, so to say. I remember one of our very senior monks, Swami Atmashraddhananda ji Maharaj. In the Hindi belt, he was quite well known. He passed away around 30 years ago. He used to make a comparison between bhakti and jnana. He used to say, jnana is like father and bhakti is like mother. How? He says, suppose the child is playing. He has gone out and he has played and he has returned home. So he has a lot of dust or sweat all over the body, and he runs to his father. And the father, the moment he sees, Arey, you are not clean. Go and get clean first. Go to your mother. So mother, he goes, and mother simply accepts him, and she gives him a bath, and she's not bothered about it that he's dirty. At that moment, he's full of dust and sweat. She simply gives bath, makes him ready, and gives the child to the father. So he used to say, jnana is like father. So it has a lot of demands. It has its own beauty. We are not criticizing jnana. We bow down to these great paths and the great acharyas of all the paths. But it's a way of understanding. So bhakti is more acceptable to general mind. It's like mother, who mother accepts everybody. All her children are, after all, her children. So bhakti says, come to me. It's not that you should overcome all your defects. You should overcome all your shortcomings, and then you have the sadhan chatushtaya, and then you will start your spiritual journey. It says no. You begin wherever you are. You take up the path of devotion, and little by little you will approach that Ishwara, who is the very source of this creation, who is all joy, who is eternal life, and so on. So this is kind of one approach. Swami Vivekananda, generally, we feel that he was more speaking about jnana. In one of his conversations, he mentions, however, a small kind of a correction or amendment to what we know of him. He says that making a kind of a comparison between him and Sri Ramakrishna. He says, what's the difference between me and Sri Ramakrishna? He says, I am all jnana without outside. I am externally all jnana, but internally I'm all bhakti. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna is all bhakti outside, but jnana inside. And when Sri Ramakrishna saw Swamiji for the first time, or the beginning few meetings, he said, you may look to be very intellectual, but you have got the eyes of a devotee, full of compassion, full of love. And we all know that Swamiji was not only a great scholar and then a great speaker and a thinker, he was a man of great feeling, a great lover, so to say, who loved humanity, who loved God, who loved others with the great genuineness. As we go understand about philosophy and bhakti, a kind of a small comparison. I'll read another one paragraph from Swamiji. He says that no amount of ignorance or wrong ideas can put a barrier between the soul and God. Even if there be no God, still hold fast to love. It is better to die seeking a God than as a dog seeking carrion. Choose the highest ideal and give your life to that. Death, being so certain, is the highest thing to give up life for a great purpose. Love will painlessly attain to philosophy. Then after, knowledge comes, para-bhakti, or supreme devotion. So this is from the inspired talks, a very insightful statement that we have read. Swamiji's idea of bhakti, that's our subject for today's discussion. Now, bhakti, as we all know, it comes from the root called bhaj. Bhaj means to serve, bhaja sevayam. It also, in one sense, it means that you divide between you and God. There is a kind of a division. What Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that I don't want to be a sugar. I want to enjoy sugar. To become a sugar means to become one with the divine, which means you discover that you and God are not different. But when we say that I want to enjoy sugar, it means that I want to enjoy his glories. I want to enjoy, like I am a human being and God is a superhuman being, so to say, but he is so close to me. And we have interactions, we have numerous ways of association, as we find in the Krishna Leela, especially the Krishna Leela. Of course, you have the Rama Leela also in the Rama's life also. We have many of instances, or the bhaktas of the Shiva, or the bhaktas of the Divine Mother in any way, or the devotees of other religious traditions, other spiritual traditions, whether it is Christian or whether it is Sufi Islam or some other, where it is not the what we call as the world religions, but they are equally great paths for approaching God. So we have this approach, the approach of reaching God or worshipping Him. So bhakti more is involved with emotions, with sentiments. Generally, our sentiments are towards the world, with other human beings or with the other objects. How deeply we are attached to small things of the life. Someone was making a very interesting observation. He says, when we are children, we are attached to our toys. Let's say somebody had a toy, a car toy, and the car toy broke and he was so unhappy as a child. Now he has grown up and he has actual car, a big, maybe let's say 30 lakhs worth of car, and somewhere it breaks and he weeps. Then he says, as a child, when you wept for your toy car, and now you are, as a grown up, you are weeping for your car. Essentially, you are weeping. There's not much difference between these two. Of course, there's a way of saying it, understanding that how deeply we are attached to the things of the world. Once we learn that things that we want in this world are not eternal, are not, they are not they are not going to last forever, then we look for somebody or something with which we can attach ourselves eternally, which we can seek forever. Like Mirabai says, Maro aso pati chahiyo jo na jive na mare, which means I want such a pati, such a husband who does not live like other human beings, which means he is subject to the pain of living, or he dies. No, I don't want such a husband. I want the eternal husband. So that kind of a seeking for eternity is a very essential thing for bhakti. That I am looking for someone who is not going to disappear from my life. Because all the love that we do in this world is temporary. We know we love other human beings, but those beings themselves one day disappear, to be replaced by some other human being, if the time is still left with us. So we always wonder, what is the real or the best object for love? So could be the best object where I can pour my whole devotion, all my emotions into that. So once that feeling comes, then we start looking for bhakti. And bhakti has been traditionally spoken as Navadha Bhakti also. As 9 types of bhakti in Srimad Bhagavatam it is spoken, in Ramcharitmanas it is spoken, in Sri Guru Granth Sahib it is spoken. There are 9 types of bhakti. So one of the bhaktis is that I listen to the glories of the Lord, or I listen to something related to God, serve the devotees of the Lord, I worship the Lord. These are various ways of Navadha Bhakti, of loving the God, or remembering God in various ways. Swami Vivekananda has spoken of bhakti in a very wonderful way in this little book, the Bhakti Yoga, where he has given various aspects of bhakti. Besides this, Swamiji has given a remarkable lecture, which is part of the lectures from Colombo to Almora. It is on bhakti. And there he has what is the real meaning of bhakti. So in I think the very first lecture given at when returned from the West, he came to Rameshwaram temple. The very first lecture which Swamiji gave there, towards the end, he says, it is not one who says the Lord and Lord and Lord is the real devotee of the Lord, but one who does the will of the Lord is a real devotee of the Lord. So in Hindi, it's a very interesting way of putting it. It says, I'll put in Hindi and then translate into English. It says that लोग संतों को तो मानते हैं, लेकिन संतों की नहीं मानते. लोग गीता को तो मानते हैं, लेकिन गीता की नहीं मानते हैं. Meaning, the people, general people, they accept the saints, but they don't follow what the saints tell them to follow. They worship the saints, but they don't take up what they want to, what they ask them to take up. They have their own agenda. Just the log Gita ko to mante hain. People worship Gita. Yes, Gita is, but Gita ki nahi mante. They don't say they don't follow what Gita tells them to follow. We accept Gita, but we don't follow what the Gita tells us. So this is a kind of our internal dichotomy or division that really creates a lot of problems in life. And bhakti is essentially trying to overcome this kind of dichotomy and trying to integrate our life. A life which is having this kind of disintegration, this division. We say something and we don't follow it. One of our monks used to say, Mirabai's bhajan is there. Mere to giridhar gopal dusro na koi. How many people really believe it? That only God is my own, all else are not my own. But this is what is the very first step towards bhakti, that we have certain realization that we are not only to direct all our emotions to the word, then we turn towards some higher object. In fact, the highest object of our love, which is God. Now, when we come to the idea of God, love for God is bhakti. And what is the idea of God then? So this is not a time, or I don't have the competence to speak much about the various concepts of God, but it's very clear given right in the Srimad Bhagavatam as well as in Swamiji's complete works in these Bhakti Yoga lectures. He says, let us think of God. There are 2 things, like you have Janma Jasya Yataha, from where the whole universe has come. Janma Adi, everything has come. So we are worshipping that being from which everything has come. But then the question may come, are there 2 gods then? There is a Nirguna God or Nirakara God, which is without any limitations, which is without any form, without any name, nameless, formless, ever-pervading God? Or is there a God also, along with that, there is a Saguna or Sakara God, Sakara Brahman? It's not like that there are two gods. There is only one God. And Swami Vivekananda, in one of his teachings, he actually says this. I'll read that thing to you. Swamiji says, are there then two gods? The not this, the Satchidananda, the existence, knowledge, bliss of the philosopher. You know, this neti neti, not this, that you can't restrict him to certain conditions, to a nama, rupa, to desha, kala. No, you can't restrict that God. And then this, the other God of love, of the bhakta. Are there two gods? Swamiji says, no. It's the same Sat Chit Ananda, who is also the God of love, the impersonal and personal in one. It is always to be understood that the personal God worshipped by the bhakta is not separate or different from the Brahman. All is Brahman, the one without a second. Only the Brahman as unity or absolute is too much of an abstraction to be loved and worshipped. So the bhakta chooses the relative aspect of God, that is Ishwara, the supreme ruler. So it is a relative aspect of the same God, so to say. One is the absolute aspect, and there is the relative aspect, and it's called Ishwara. The word Ishwara, we all know, it comes from the word Ish, to rule. So that one who is rules. So Ishate. So the supreme ruler of the world. Just think of it. What is supreme ruler of the world? We all live in the society. We all live in the institutions. We are all interconnected. And whenever we need any help, we approach each other. Somebody needs some advice from a lawyer, he goes to a lawyer. But if that lawyer needs some advice, he goes to another lawyer. Or a person goes to a doctor because he has some sickness and something he wants to overcome physically. And when that doctor, again, he needs any help, he goes to another doctor. And that the third one may go to another one doctor. Or the lawyer may go to another one. So each one has got somewhere some dependence. Everyone goes to someone to search for a solution, to go out of the limitation in which he lives or he is facing, the problems that he is facing. But when we come to Ishwara, he doesn't have to go to anybody. He is the end. Sa kashta sa paragatais, as the Kathopanishad says. Beyond him, there is nothing. So we turn towards God is like turning towards that ultimate ruler of the world. So we are all, ruled. We are ruled in the sense, now we have our own Indian governments, the state governments and the central governments. So we have our own rulers, so to say. But then these rulers themselves are ruled by a divine power. See, we are ruled by the elements of nature. We are ruled by different circumstances, different the kind of perspectives in which we all have put ourselves into. But there is a supreme ruler. All these rulers which we have, they are time bound. There is some great king, for instance, he has been ruling, or a great president or a prime minister has been ruling, but that's also within time, space, and causation. He will be one day forgotten. He will disappear into as if nothing. But there is one ruler which will always continue to exist, and that is supposed to be what we call as Ishwara. So bhakti is bhakti or devotion to Ishwara. Swami Vivekananda, while analyzing bhakti, another beautiful statement he makes. He says, we have these kind of two approaches, bhakti and jnana. It's not a comparative study or a comparative way of thinking. Just trying to understand. He says, we define the ultimate reality often as Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda refers to that there is eternal easiness, life, eternal knowledge, and eternal joy. Swamiji says, let's say, it comes in his conversations. He says, let's say there is easiness, life. And then it has got two aspects. It's a way of understanding. There are two aspects. One is the chit, and that is ananda. When we lay emphasis more on chit, which is consciousness or knowledge or awareness, it is what we call as the jnana approach. Or when we emphasize more on the ananda, it is the bhakti approach. Or we are approaching the Lord through joy. One is through analysis, detachment. As Maharaj was saying, we had a talk on the same subject of jnana by Sarvapriyanandaji. So there is a approach of detachment, because approach of being not attached to anything is very essential to the jnana approach. So that is the consciousness kind of approach. And this is the ananda type of approach, where we are worshipping the Lord through a sense of unmixed joy called ananda. It's not the ananda which a person gets by getting a worldly object. It is not connected with those worldly achievements either, where ego is satisfied, where a person feels that he has got certain thing and that has made him very fulfilled. And once that something goes away, he will feel very dejected. It is a different type of joy and different type of satisfaction or inner fulfillment. And when a person seeks that, he is full of happiness. And that is what Bhakti Yoga Swamiji mentions. During his, these lectures, he also mentions about Gauni Bhakti and Parabhakti. Gauni Bhakti is the Bhakti which a person has at a kind of a preliminary Bhakti. Just as we have a preliminary approach to, let's say, mathematics. And then we have an advanced approach to mathematics. So this is something like that. So we have a preliminary, but preliminary and higher thing. We should not develop a feeling of that I am very, I am advanced, so I am very more better than others. I remember a beautiful incident about it. A beautiful analogy given by, there was a great Hindi speaker on Ramcharitmanas. He used to make this understanding very clear by saying this. He used to say, suppose you go to a chemist shop, and there you enter the chemist shop and you are full of kind of pride. And you look around and look at the various things which are displayed in his cabinets and tell the person on the counter, give me the best medicine that's possible. He will humbly tell you, sir, it's not the best medicine which is important. Important thing is, what is your disease? What is this illness that you are suffering from? Based on that, I'll give you the best or the costliest, as you wish. So the first thing that is important is where we stand. So if a person says, I'm having a Gauni Bhakti level, I am at a Gauni Bhakti level, it doesn't mean that he is at a lower level, a preparatory level. He is where he is. So he has to be given all that is required for him to grow. And Swamiji speaks of the role or the very crucial importance of the pratikas in life, the various symbols that the devotees worship. The one big question comes to many people, why bhakti should always be associated with worship of images? Swamiji again inspired talks, he says, these various images and pratikas, pratika means the symbols, they are like the nails or pegs to hang our faith upon. What a beautiful way of saying it. To hang our faith upon. So we have our faith, we are looking for some perfect object, so to say, as far as we understand now, to which we can put our faith or shraddha, our devotion, our respect, our admiration, our deep sense of surrender and deep sense of love towards that. And that is what our pratika is. Let me recall the famous incident with Swamiji, connected with Swami Vivekananda, when he went to Rajasthan in Alwar, sometimes in 1800s, 1890s or late 80s. We know that in Alwar, the Raja of Alwar, Swamiji was his guest. And one day in the small sabha which he was having, the Raja, in a kind of a ridiculous tone, asked Swamiji, look, Swamiji, I don't believe in these images. What will happen of me? So he was trying to poke Swamiji that he will say some word and then there'll be a discussion, and perhaps he will, because he was kind of educated in the English ways of life. And Swamiji first did not reply. Then when he repeated his question, then Swamiji quietly asked one of the courtiers or the ministers standing by that please take that image of there was a painting of the Raja on the wall, please take it down. It was taken down. Then he said, now, he had told that minister, can you spit on it? What a blasphemous order it was. So he said, how can I ever do that? The whole assembly there was taken aback. How can we even think of it, let alone do it, that there is a Raja is sitting and his picture is there and we can spit on it? Then Swamiji says, what is there? It is only some color, some paper, and some mixing, and then this image is there. Then one of them said, no, sir, it's not just that. It is the likeness of our Maharaja. How can we ever even think of it? Then turning to the king, Swamiji says, likewise, Raja, when people are praying to various images, they are not praying to, let's say, the matter with which or the material with which the image is made, whether it is wood or stone or it is iron or copper. They don't say, oh, wood, oh, iron. They don't say that. They see their image of the divinity there. They perhaps see Krishna, they see Rama, they see Durga in that, and they turn to that divinity and pray to him. So this is a very important thing to remember, that we learn to recognize the importance of images in the life. So in Hinduism, we do the Murti Puja. The Murti Puja is not just image worship as some people say. It is rather a very different way of looking at it. It is not just idol worship. There you have the image in which you are actually doing prana pratishtha. You are invoking life in that. And after invoking the life, you offer whatever life requires, so to say, with great devotion. So there is, let's say, an image which a devotee worships. He says this is Ishwara. And in Hinduism, you can have any types of images. You can have the, they call it anthropomorphic or non-anthropomorphic. So whether it is a human shape or whether it is a no human shape. It could be even a tree or a small stone. It's not really, or even a small diagram. We have the Shri Chakra, the Chakra Upasana is done. It's a diagrammatic representation of the divinity. So in whichever way we worship, we invoke the presence of that Ishwara in that. We try to feel. We say, now I have my devotion to that. My all emotions are now directed towards that image, that pratika. And that is very essential, that he then tries to feel the presence of that. In many of the Vaishnava temples or many of the Hindu temples in general, we have the Shayana Graha for the Lord. That Lord is not only accepting his things like from us, he also is now is kind of it's evening. Now he will take a rest. It is humanizing the effect. It is humanizing the presence of God. The famous Christian saint, Saint Lawrence, he has Brother Lawrence. He has written a book called Practice of Presence of God. So it is like a practicing the not practicing the worldly presence, but the divine presence in our life. You find us, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita. Swami Buddhananda ji was, one of our great thinkers of the Ramakrishna mission. He wrote a series of article on that. I think 2 or 3 part article in the Vedanta Kesari, long years back, maybe 1970s, on the practice of presence of God. There he mentions about how in the Bhagavad Gita itself we have yat karoshi, yadashnoshi, yat tapasyasi. Whatever you do, you offer it to God. So it's not that bhakti is to be done only when you go to temple. Of course, you go to temple, you have the paraphernalia of a puja there, and you, with due respect and with the due knowledge, you make use of that and try to feel the presence of God through that. And Sri Ramakrishna particularly has revived this system of puja from a very spiritual angle in the modern times. But the bhakti should not be only in the temple. Even when you are doing whatever you are doing, you can offer it to God. Because after all, it has come from God. Whatever we have, the ultimate source is that Ishwara. So you offer everything to him. Whether, let's say, if some of you, I guess that some of you are, let's say, are doing PhD. So when you do PhD also, offer it to the Lord. Because the intelligence that you have, the life that you have, the effort that you have done, ultimately its source is from a divine being. So we offer it back to the Lord. So this kind of relationship, with developing relationship, is very important in bhakti. Swami Vivekananda and also in Sri Ramakrishna's life, we find this relationship idea has been spoken of. There are so many bhavas with which we approach God. The Sakhi bhava, or the Shanta bhava, the Madhur bhava, which means the various approaches how I look upon God. I look upon him as my friend, or am I look upon him as my mother and father, or as my beloved, or maybe even as my brother. There was one incident of a Ramayat sadhu. Somewhere he says this. He assumes the attitude of a teacher for Rama. Rama is his student, and he is all the time kind of teaching Lord. So it seems it is recorded in one of the magazines published by the Ramakrishna Mission. One of the monks had written this small story of this Ramayat sadhu, that he had come to a village, and there he will stay in a small hut, and always people used to hear him as if he is teaching somebody. Not only teaching, he is also sometimes scolding also. Because while teaching, you have to sometimes scold also the student. Then only the teaching becomes complete, so to say, so that he is able to understand. So this Ramayat sadhu does that. He looks upon Rama as his own student. There are so many ways if we can look upon that being. One great Acharya on the Bhakti, he says that only God can have all the forms into one. So for instance, we have mother, the mother is mother, she is not father, so to say. Or father is father, he is not mother. At least biologically we know they are different. Or we have a sister, or we have a brother, or we have our things. But God is called one in all. Tvameva mata, tvameva bandhuscha, tvameva mata cha pita tvameva, tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva, tvameva vidya cha dravidam tvameva, tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. So you are my everything. You are my mother, father, brother, sister, whatever relationship in which I can think of, you are that. So say this is possible only for the Lord, only for Ishwara, where all relationships kind of go and merge. That merging happens in that ultimate being. As to what is bhakti, one of the finest explanation of that, it is in the Narada Bhakti Sutra. The sage Narada has written about bhakti in the form of sutras, aphorisms, formulas, so to say. Of course, there is Shandilya Bhakti Sutras also, which are more little philosophical. They're also wonderful. And Narada mentions in his sutras about the Shandilya Bhakti Sutra and also Garga Samhita. And Swami Vivekananda, in the 6th volume of the complete works we will find, has translated those sutras into English. It's very interesting. We never know that Swamiji has made translation of the Narada Bhakti Sutras, and it has been published this as a part of a bigger book called Bhakti, published from the Madras Math or from Chennai Ramakrishna Math. It is part of the book called Bhakti, the Path of Divine Love. There you find this translation of Swamiji has been published there as part of one of the chapters. So there he speaks about, it's not, the original is not given there, only the English portion is given there. And it's wonderful that Swamiji has made a translation of Narada Bhakti Sutra in that way. Whether all the sutras have been done, I don't know, but he has divided into 5 chapters or so and published and made a translation. One of the very important things which is required for cultivation of bhakti, according to Swami Vivekananda as well as all other teachers, is the cultivation of the holy company, satsanga. In satsanga, we think of the sat or the ultimate reality, or it could be lila kathana, that you glorify the various leelas or the divine actions of the Lord. In Hindu tradition, we have Sanatana tradition, we have so many of them, whether it is Krishna Leela or Rama Leela or the glories of the stories connected with Shiva or any other of these various religions, various paths. One thing is that Hinduism doesn't believe in so many gods and goddesses as sometimes we think. We believe in only one God, but that God, as if to suit our taste, we accept a particular form of that God, and that God is the ultimate God. So you have the form of Krishna as your beloved one, and somebody has the form of Rama as the beloved one. So it's not there are 2 gods. There's only one God who has accepted different forms. So these different forms are the manifestation of that same ultimate reality. But as Swamiji speaks of the idea of Ishtadevata, in Bhakti, the idea of the Devata or the form of God, which is very Ishta to you, to great, you like it very much, you are very much connected with that, is very much emphasized. So you speak of the Ishtadevata, it is said that Tulsi Ram Goswami Tulsidas, when he went to Vrindavan, there of course it is the Krishna's form, but he said, Srinathe Janaki Nathe Abheda Paramatmani Tathapi Mama Sarvasya Rama Kamala Lochana. So it is said that Lord, he prayed to the Lord. So Lord, now you are having the flute in your hand, but I want to see you with the bow and arrow in your hand. And Lord did, he did present himself that way. This is called Ishtadevata Bhakti, or the Bhakti of the Lord in a particular way. This is wonderful. Only one thing Swami Vivekananda says, that sometimes at this level of our bhakti, we might become too much fanatical. So much so that we start denouncing other forms of devotion or other forms in which the people worship the Lord. He says this should be avoided at all cost. People have their own way, their own understanding of worshipping the Lord. So let them worship in their own way. Let us not try to say that everyone should worship in my way alone, and my way alone is the right way. So it's not to be restricted like that. And then there are other things which Swamiji speaks of in the Bhakti Yoga. He says there is one is the need for a guru, the need for a teacher is very much essential in cultivation of bhakti. He enumerates the qualities of the guru and also enumerates the qualities or the characteristics of a shishya. I'm not going into details of that. Swamiji's he has given a beautiful language, beautiful presentation of that. He also speaks of the importance of mantra, repetition of God's name. How mantra or repetition of mantra plays a very essential role in cultivation of bhakti. All these are kind of, to begin with, they are the Gauni bhakti, but as we grow, these things become kind of mature or more intense, and the para bhakti, where all the external rules as if they die off and one attains that intense love for God. To such an intense lover of God, nothing matters then. Then there are no rules, no restrictions, and he becomes like an ocean then. Until then, he was like a river who was flowing towards the ocean, and but once he reaches the ocean, there is no name and form, as if in the ocean when the river enters. The same way he reaches there and he is free from that. So this is the ultimate goal. The bhakti is not a way to fulfill our worldly desires. Most people, they think that bhakti means like that. It is called sakama bhakti, bhakti with desires. You have certain needs and you try to fulfill that. It's not that it is bad to do so. Only it is said it is a very preliminary stage. In the Bhagavad Gita, 4 types of devotees are spoken of: Artha, Artharthi, Jigyasu, and Jnani. These 4 types of devotees are spoken of, and very interestingly, Tulsidas ji also speaks of this thing in the Ramcharitmanas, and the same are spoken in the Guru Granth Sahib also. And of course, Swamiji refers to these 4 people. There are different levels in which we are all seeking. So first is the Artha. Artha means he's in a crisis. He's praying to God because he's in a crisis. And it could be any type. It could be a health crisis. It could be financial crisis. It could be any other crisis. And if he is praying to God, it's nothing wrong in that. It's not that, oh, he is not a bhakta at all. Why should I have been praying? What else shall he do if he doesn't pray to God? If he has faith in God and if he's praying, it's okay. But again, we should not mean to say that if a person is having any problem, this crisis, he should pray and he should not take any action. He should not make any effort to remove. Suppose fire is burning and he stands before that with closed eyes and says, "Oh Lord, please douse the fire, douse the fire." No, that's not what is meant. It said that you pray to God, but carry on with your whatever energy, whatever buddhi, whatever God has given us. Let us make use of that. So this aspect of bhakti also Swamiji has very much emphasized. We pray to God, we express our difficulty to Him, but at the same time, to begin with, we do continue with our efforts also. So this is artha. Then artharthi, where a person has got certain needs. They are not as critical, but he has needs. He has certain things he wants to fulfill. Most of the people, when they do bhakti, they are at that level. They say, let my health be okay, let my source of income remain so and so, may this particular thing gets resolved. And Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, people, when they pray like that, it is because they have some devotion to God. He calls them as Sukritana. They are people who have done some sukrita, good actions. That is why their hearts are purified and they are believing in God. Only thing is, they have forgotten, as Sri Ramakrishna says, that they can ask and they can obtain much bigger thing than these worldly things from him. It's just like going to a king and saying, "Oh king, give me 5 pumpkins." He smiles at you. Why you ask for pumpkins? You have much, I am capable of giving much more. I have greater capacity than what you are thinking of. So likewise, if a true devotee goes to the Lord, uh, true in the sense that he has grown to that level, he is not just asking for worldly things, he asks for something more. He asks for devotion. He asks for jnana, bhakti, viveka, vairagya, as Swami Vivekananda asked when he went to Mother Kali. We know that story, that when he was so much afflicted because of his family circumstances before he became a monk, he approached Sri Ramakrishna, and Sri Ramakrishna said, "You go to Mother yourself." And when he went to ask the basic needs for his family, he forgot all about that. And he saw the glorious mothers as if standing there and said, "Oh mother, give me Shuddha Bhakti, Viveka, Vairagya, Jnana." And he came back. And Sri Ramakrishna, in a teasing way, he asked him, "Did you ask for what you wanted?" He said, "No, I forgot that. Go and ask again." And second time also, the same thing repeated. And third time also, again, when he was sent, same thing was repeated. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, "You see, your heart is so pure, you cannot ask for anything worldly. But anyway, I pray to God that may your basic needs of your family be fulfilled." So this is what a true devotee would finally reach to. He doesn't want anything worldly. And say there is a Jigyasu devotee and there is the Jnani devotee. The Jigyasu is the seeker. I would rather, in a specific sense, say most of the people are Jigyasu type of devotees. Most of those who are listening to this talk also, they are also Jigyasu type of devotees. There may be a few who are Jnani. Who is a Jnani? He says, "There's nothing else which is worthy of my devotion except God." That's a Jnani devotee. Nothing else in this world needs that I should be seeking. Only Jnani. Only that much of Jnana he has got. So Swami Vivekananda's approach to Bhakti Yoga, this approach to seeking God or union with God through emotions, through devotion, is a traditional approach. At the same time, it is a very modern approach also. It is an approach in the traditional sense because Swamiji has referred to all the traditional acharyas, traditional ways, to all the things which has come down in the Bhakti tradition. At the same time, Swamiji has given a very remarkable modern explanation, contemporary explanation as to how do we practice that devotion to God. So this is what I would say in today's this talk. So thank you very much for your kind and patient hearing. Thank you to Revered Swami Atmashraddhananda for giving this opportunity.